the future is probably going to get even more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Commonly known as VUCA. It's a term that the US military coined: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I think we're probably facing that more than at any other time in any other period in history. We're also facing a period of just immense change, many levels and many layers of in social politics, in the economy, in organizations. This is driven by various factors. And I think if we look forward and we ask ourselves where we might be, and I think that's the whole idea. We can't really crystal ball gaze anymore and try and say that this is exactly where we're going to be a year from now, right? So that raises the big question as to what the future looks like, right? Technology, changing demographics, I think these are the two key drivers, if you will. And I think for ASEAN specifically, the entrance of 400 million people into the middle class is going to create an enormous shift in how ASEAN sees itself, right? And how the rest of the world decides to come to play at this party. One of the things that's come up in terms of how does one deal with volatility, uncertainty, and all this complexity is the whole idea about collaboration. And collaboration is not just about getting together with another party to get something done, but you collaborate on how you gather information, how you make sense of that information, how you go to market with that. It also looks at how you bring unseeming partners together, and how you look at that entire ecosystem of your stakeholders, right? Because they all become an integral part of how you collaborate. One of the key skills that leaders are going to require moving forward is the whole idea of influence. It's about how do you actually influence a variety of stakeholders that hold a variety of perspectives, but yet are critical to your own business and the way you want to do things. Influence has been identified as one key skill set. The other, if you would call it a skill, is how to be inclusive, right? And that again takes on a variety of interpretations, if you will, in terms of that, right? Are you being inclusive for the sake of being inclusive, or are you being inclusive because you want to arrive at a better decision-making process, or a better quality decision? And the idea around that really is about developing the skill of both being able to give feedback and receive feedback. And critical to this is a leader's ability to listen and really listen. Support structures are going to be critical. I think the whole idea of looking at leadership development as a process and having a long-term view of that is becoming more and more critical and essential in terms of how you would implement these strategies. Now, what do I mean by that? Typically, companies tend to look at leadership development as an event. Let's send someone on a leadership development program. Let's put someone on an executive coaching initiative for 6 months, and then let's expect a miraculous change. That's not going to happen if you come back to an organization where business is as usual, right? The internal structures that are required in order to support that entire leadership development process require several things. It needs to be plugged into the entire talent management process. It needs to plug into how an organization sees its leadership culture evolving. What sort of behaviors would you like to see moving forward? And most importantly, the whole idea around that is you develop leaders in the context of how it supports your business strategy. So the leadership strategy and the business strategy have to really be integrated. Right? So when someone goes out for a program or out on an assignment that is meant to stretch them, and when they come back with key learning and how they have grown and developed, You need a structure that embraces that allows them to grow, that allows them to fail, that allows them to reflect and say, well, what's the next step? So in terms of how development is looked at in the future, I think the components are not going to change, but how we approach those components needs to shift. Right? You're going to have training, you're going to have project teams, you're going to have coaching, you are going to have mentorship programs that will continue. But I think how you encapsulate all of that into a leadership strategy is going to make the big difference of how leaders of the future are going to be developed. I think it's all, again, the tools are all out there. You've got a variety of companies who are offering both tools that are technologically driven, whether they be collaborative platforms, whether they be e-learning, for instance, tried and tested tools. You've got an abundance of coaches out there right now. So if you look at resources from the types of people that are out there, the types of expertise that's out there, the types of actual physical tools that are out there, I think today we probably again have more tools than we've ever had at any point in our history for developing leaders. You've got simulations, you've got simulators, right? But all of this needs to really happen in context. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not going to be something that's going to be plug and play. It needs to be thoughtful. It also needs to be very, very intentional. And again, it comes back to really looking at what do you expect your leaders to do in the future, right? And if there is an expectation that you need to develop a certain kind of culture, let's talk about collaboration, and you say you expect your people to be much more collaborative across the organization, not just amongst their peers, but across their functions, across their business units, across the stakeholders, across that ecosystem. Whatever development needs to take place, whatever tools are used, needs to be able to facilitate that process. Right? And so, again, if you look out if you will, in the stratosphere of leadership development, you're going to find assessments that cover cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, values assessments, psychometric drivers, even exploring the dark side of human behavior and understanding that. A variety of 360 instruments, psychometric, again, personality profiling tools. But how all of that comes together and how an organization makes meaning out of all of that really depends on where they want to go and how they expect to see their leaders grow within their organizations and drive their business.